Hi guys, my name's Ellie and I'm the course leader for the graphic design course here at Warrington and Vale Royal College. Now this is the first of 5 mini tutorials on how to use GIMP. Now if you don't know what GIMP is, it is a free editing software available to download on PC and Mac. So it's a photo editing piece of software, very similar to Photoshop. It's not as complex as Photoshop, but it's a really good starting point to kind of get your head round layers and very similar tools that you would find on Photoshop. So it's really good piece of software to have a go with. So this first workshop, I'm going to be focusing on how to use the Paths tool. Now the Paths tool is one of the main kind of tools that you would use if you wanted to select or cut out an image accurately, and the Paths tool is very similar to the Photoshop pen tool and Illustrator pen tool. So if you get your head around it now using on GIMP, you'll be a pro when it comes to using it on Adobe software. So if you've never used GIMP before, like Photoshop and Illustrator, GIMP uses layers. Now you can find your layers panel on the right hand side. So you can see where it says layers here, and then we have the basketball player layer that we can see on the screen now. So later on a tutorial later down the line, we will be kind of looking at layers in a bit more detail, but in terms of this, it's just focusing on the pen tool. So your basic tools are going to be found on the top left hand corner. We've got the pen tool here, or in this case it's called the Paths tool. So I do apologise if I do say pen tool. I'm so used to saying that because I use Adobe software mostly, but the Paths tool is pretty much exactly the same. So I'm going to click that. I now want to zoom. Essentially what I want to do is cut out this basketball player and get rid of the background. So I'm going to have to zoom in a bit so I can actually make sure that I'm actually being very accurate with my cutting. So if you're using a PC, one of the easiest ways that you can zoom in is if you have a scroller on your mouse, you can scroll in and out. I unfortunately don't have a scroller on my mouse, and I'm also using a Mac, so some of the controls are a little bit different to a PC. So what I tend to use is either the magnifying glass, which is on the left hand side with the rest of the tools, and you can kind of select an area and it will zoom in and you can kind of get closer as well. Another way to do it is you've got your percentages at the bottom here, and you can zoom in and out using these, but sometimes the magnifying glass is a little bit more accurate. So I'm going to move in a bit closer. That will do. And you can use your navigation bars at the top and the bottom to kind of move up and down and left and right. Okay, so back to my pen tool, or Paths tool, should I say. Now, if you've never used the Paths tool before, or the pen tool, which is on Photoshop or Illustrator, how it works is it uses anchors and handles to change the direction and curves of lines that you're drawing. So essentially I want to draw a line around this basketball player so I can cut out the background. So when I click once, this dot that I've added is what we call an anchor point. So it's an anchors down onto that particular area. Now, if I click once to add another anchor point, you can now see there's a line connecting the two. And essentially, as we go around the basketball player, that line will obviously increase and those anchor points will also increase. But obviously, if I was just to click, the problem I'm going to have is I'm going to have these very straight lines, and then as I'm cutting this image out, the line's going to become quite jagged and it's not going to be smooth. And so the best thing about using this pen tool is that you can be far more accurate. So I'm just going to undo that. And obviously to undo, you'll press Command Z if you're using a Mac, or Control Z to undo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click my next anchor point, except I'm not going to let go of the mouse. I'm still holding that mouse down. And as you can see, as I move my mouse along, you can now see the line that connects those two anchor points is curving depending on the direction of which I'm moving the mouse. So as I move the mouse up, the line that I've just drawn goes down, and then opposite, as I bring my line down, the curvature of that line, the white line goes up. So it gives us more accuracy in going around things that are curved. Now I've just let go. Now the circle is our anchor point. We also can tell that I'm on this anchor point because the circle is hollow, unlike the first anchor point that we just put down, it's full, it's a full white, so we're not actually selecting that particular anchor point at this point. You'll also notice that there's a slight yellow line coming from this anchor point, and these both lead to what we call handles, and the handles are indicated by a square. Now if we click these handles, they move. Now if I click the handle on the left hand side, it controls that line that connects those two anchor points that we've just seen. So if we put an anchor point down, we quite haven't got the curve right, and we can click on our handles and we can basically smooth that out and get it more accurate. And I'm going to keep clicking and dragging just to get those curves right. And you can see I'm doing it quite quickly. Oh. Okay, now as I've got to this point, if I was to put another anchor point here, the problem we have is that this line connecting these two anchor points is curved, it's going into his face. So this is when having an understanding of these handles and to control these curves comes in handy. So if we click on this anchor point, we know we've selected it as it's a hollow circle, and we've also now can see our handles, and we can click on this handle and realign that white line between the two anchor points into the right shape that we want, and then we can just carry on as normal, as so. So the pen tool is probably one of the hardest tools to learn how to use, but it's also one of the most essential. So if you get your head around this, you'll be on for a win. A lot of our students get really frustrated with it to begin with, as it gets quite difficult. But honestly, I promise you, once you get your head around it, life would be a lot easier when it comes to photo editing and cutting images out. Now here I probably could have moved that anchor point a bit too high up, so I'm grabbing my handle here just to smooth out something, smooth it out a bit, and I'm going to keep going around the head. Now this will take a while, so I'm just going to speed this up. Okay guys, so as we near the start, so we've done almost a full circle going around this basketball player. This is quite an important step. It's basically we need to link those two ends with each other. So as we get closer, we've got the last anchor point that I've just put down, and we've got the first anchor point that we've put down right at the beginning. So what we're then going to do is we're going to press Command or Control, depending if you're using a Mac or a PC. So for a Mac it would be Command, and a PC it would be Control. I'm just going to hover over that first anchor point that we put down. I'm going to press Command or Control if you're using a PC, and you will notice that there's now a little linked sign next to the cursor, and I'm just lifting it on and off again so you can see that difference there. And that is indicating that we're back at the beginning. So as you're holding Control or Shift down, Control or Command down, click, and now it links that line together. So if we zoom out, you'll now be able to see that we've selected right around that basketball player. However, we do have one issue. If we were to cut out this basketball player and were to cut out this background, we'll still be left with these gaps underneath his arms. So what we're going to do is exactly the same thing as we've just done by drawing on the basketball player. We're going to also cut out the area under his arms. So I'm just going to zoom in, get my pen tool. Now, we'll notice that now my line for my pen tool has disappeared. And this is quite a common thing. If you switch off the paths tool to use another tool, it disappears. Now if that does happen, you don't need to panic about it. Down on your layers panel, you've got layers, channels and paths. Click on the paths tab, and what you'll now see is basically it will say unnamed. But if you click on this kind of icon here, you can view it, so you can see that line again for us. And as you've got the paths tool selected, if you hover over that line, you'll notice there's like a little hand of a pointing. If you click on that, it reselects it for you. Okay, so don't panic if it does happen. It's a really common thing. So just go to that paths tab, and you can find it again that way. But now we're going to draw underneath this arm, do exactly the same thing. remembering that to drag and hold to really emphasize those curves. And if you do go wrong, you can use your handles on either side of those anchor points to neaten things up. So yeah, it's just a bit of practice. And once you've done under the one arm, you can do under the next arm. And this is much smaller, this one, so this won't take long. But again, making sure you're clicking and dragging to kind of emphasize those curves, and then holding Command or Control if you're using a PC to link back to the beginning. Okay, so now we've got all of those bits drawn, and I'm going to zoom out to about 25% so we can see the whole thing. Over to your layers panel, we're going to go back into paths. Okay, so we can see that the whole basketball player is there now. We can actually see in the thumbnail that underneath the arms also been selected, which is really good. What you then have to do is over on the left hand side, we have got selection from path. If we click that, what now happens is that it's now turned those paths into a selection. And we know it's a selection because the line has, like, it moves, it's got black and white lines kind of flashing on it. And that's what you want to see. That's indicating to me that they're the areas that I've now selected. Now at the moment, we know we want to delete the background, but at the moment we've got the basketball player selected. And so if I was to delete this, I would delete the basketball player and not the background. So what we need to do is inverse our selection. And how you do that is if you go up to where it says select, you can put invert. And now what you'll see is that that moving line is still around the basketball player, but it's also around the edge of this canvas. You can see that there, it's moving. So now we want to delete it. So one of the ways you can do it, you can go to Edit and Cut, which is, as I'm using a Mac, mine's Command X, or it could be Control X if you're using a PC. So click that, and that now deletes our background. It's also deleted the areas underneath the basketball player's arms as well. Now obviously it's quite unusual to see at the moment because it's quite difficult to see how neat you've actually cut it out, because we can still see the anchor points, and obviously that line is still moving on there. So the first thing we need to do is deselect it, so up to where select is in the top, and then just put none, it deselects it, and then we can go back over to our paths panel and we can hide those paths, and then go back to your move tool and it will get rid of those. So we can actually see from this that it cut out pretty accurately. I did rush it a bit in some areas. I don't think I did a great job around the knee here, but overall I'm quite pleased with it. Now, like I said before, take your time using this paths tool, because if you master it, take your time cutting things out. Whatever you end up using these images for, whether it's for a digital collage, there'll be a much more, a much neater and a far better effect from cutting something out using the pen tool rather than using a random selection tool. So this is your first tutorial on how to use GIMP. Look out for the next 4 videos. You'll be basically building up on this skill and how to actually take this design and use it in combination with another image. If you want to know how to save these, go to File, Save, or Save As, depending on what you want to do. I'm going to go to Save As, so I have more control about where I put it. Put it on, maybe on the desktop or somewhere you can find it. Now, it automatically saves as a GIMP file, which is an XCF file. What that means is that obviously if you wanted to edit this later on in GIMP, you can, and obviously your paths will be there still. So I certainly recommend you do that so you can come back to it. Another thing you can do if you want to save it as a JPEG, so if you do save anything as a JPEG, that does mean that you can use the image on like social media, or you can share it. So basically you're going to be saving it as a PNG or a JPEG file, and to do that you have to go down to export as, and you can change the name of it at the top and choose your file type. automatically already selected JPEG for me, but if it doesn't, where it says select file type at the bottom, just drop down the menu and you'll have JPEGs, you'll have PNG files that you can choose from as well, depending what you want. And you can also save it as a Photoshop image as well. So say later down the line you want to use Photoshop for it, then obviously you can do that as well. But there's loads of different file extensions you can save it as. So I'm just going to save it as a JPEG. I'm going to press export. Oh, I'm going to call it something different so I don't replace my other one. Press export. And what should happen is this export option comes up. Now this top bar is basically asking you what the quality you want that JPEG image to be. And I would always go for 100% unless the image is generally quite big. And just press export, it'll then export it out to where you want it to be saved, and then you've got a JPEG version of it. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed this. Please look out for the next 4 videos. They'll take you through more complex steps of how to use GIMP. But good luck with it and I hope you enjoyed it.